What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about some differences between England and the USA. Now, how many differences exactly? 101 differences between England and the USA. My goodness. That is a lot. So today I'm really excited to check out this video by Wandering Ravens. They are actually a pair of Americans who have been to the UK. So today I'm really depending on them to point out all the little things about how life in England is quite different to life here in America. So we better get started. 101 differences between England and America. Let's go.
England and the States have different definitions of what is considered old. Whereas in the States, a house that is 100 years old would be considered a really old house.
Right.
In England, it's more like a house that is 400 or more years old.
Oh my God. That's so true. That is such a good observation, but I don't know if you actually have to have been to England to realize this. Maybe you just have to have a basic understanding of history, so maybe it understands why I didn't know this. But yeah, America hasn't been around as long, so when we talk about old stuff here in America, if it's like 100 years old, it's like, whoa. That was a long time ago. You know, if we're talking back to the founding of the United States, not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. Whereas, you know, like Great Britain, one of the biggest, British Empire, one of the biggest empires in history, most powerful and longest. And yeah, so this makes complete sense to me. I've just never thought about it like that.
That's considered an old house. A house that was built just 100 years ago in the UK, that's not really that old.
It's basically brand new.
Yeah, basically.
A lot of homes and...
Wait, well, just one more thing about this. It's true, when you're literally buying a house here in America, if the house is like 50 years old, let alone 100 years old, you would really, probably not want to spend as much money on it because you'd be like, that is a very, very old house. Maybe that kind of standard is true in England as well, but are there actually houses that are like 200 years old and older that you would consider purchasing and moving into? Because I've never even heard of a home that old in America that someone was like buying, for example.
Homes in England have conservatories, and so you have this big glass room full of plants that you can go sit in.
What is this? Conservatories?
Basically brand new.
Yeah, basically.
A lot of homes in England have conservatories.
A lot of homes do? A conservatory is what exactly? That sounds like something you'd read in like a botanical textbook or something to do with plants, or...
And so you have this big glass room full of plants that you can go sit in, and we don't really have that in America.
That's normal in English houses? I understand if it exists, but is it common? Is it normal? Because that's incredible if there's just this whole extra room in English houses, a conservatory, just for like lounging, enjoying plant life. Wow, that's really interesting. I've never really heard of that. I've heard the word conservatory, but in like a museum or something, never really in a house.
In America, when you pay with a card, the cashier will never check to see if your signature on the card and your signature on the receipt match. But in England, they will do that.
This is a pretty big difference. Now, in the...
Wow. Oh, wow. These just keep going. This is great, but I feel like I gotta pause the video to at least comment on these facts. These are really interesting, actually. And it's exactly what I was hoping for. Sort of smaller little details about how life in England is different to life here in America. things you wouldn't necessarily have ever heard about unless it's from somebody who has experienced it themselves, because these are really small things. Details like in England, they actually look at the signature on your credit card. In America, you don't even really have to sign the back of your card anymore. I remember that used to be a thing, but they certainly never checked the signatures to see if they matched up. I mean, honestly, that just sounds like that's a good thing, like an extra level of security in England. So far, most of this stuff just sounds like good stuff in England that we don't do here. Like, you got older stuff, conservatories, better, like, fraud detection. It just sounds like better.
We'll do that.
This is a pretty big difference. Now, in the US, dogs and pets are never, ever, ever allowed inside of a food establishment. Unless they're a service animal and they're wearing the vest and you have paperwork, then they're allowed in. But we found that a lot, quite a few actually, cafes, coffee shops, that sort of thing, and even pubs allowed dogs to come into their shops.
England is just better. Yeah, it's been proven now. You have more dogs allowed in places. Why can't we just let dogs into our places in America? Yeah, this is considered just, not just rude, just unacceptable. Like, perhaps from a sanitation point of view, and also just because it's just the cultural norm. Like, it'd just be strange to bring your dog to a restaurant or even really a cafe. Unless it was a super chill cafe. I've seen a dog in a barber shop once. That was fun. But this is certainly far from normal. If this is actually common in England, that's awesome.
In the United States, we have this thing that we call a spigot or faucet. And apparently, as it's been explained to us literally thousands of times by now on one of our previous videos, in England, the proper word for these are taps.
Taps, not a faucet, a tap. I have heard this word before. We call it tap water, but not really the tap. But I would understand this.
Cars in England don't really wait for pedestrians to cross the road. So, for example, in the United States, I'm coming up to a crosswalk. A car is coming. The car slows down and lets me go. But in England, I come up to a crosswalk. Car doesn't slow down. Car keeps going because they know I'm just going to jaywalk. So it's different. The relationship between cars and people is a little bit different.
What? Is this a law? Is this a law? A traffic law that's different? Or are people in England just kind of like jaded by people jaywalking, crossing like illegally? This is kind of scary. Yeah, in America, it's known and expected that drivers and cars will yield to pedestrians. They will stop for you. Most Americans, no matter how, sometimes we can be disrespectful, sometimes we can be selfish, but when it comes to driving, Americans are pretty good at this. Where if you're walking, especially crossing the road, cars will stop. Americans really don't want to hit you. Like, we are really good at suing people here in America. Americans don't want to hit you. Maybe it's also that we know Americans are also kind of unpredictable. So I'm not about to get into a guessing game about whether this person is going to cross or not. I'm just going to stop. That's what's expected. I also think that's polite. It's considered polite. But this is kind of surprising me because it's like the opposite in England. You shouldn't expect a car to stop for you. That's kind of scary. That sounds counterintuitive to me.
Another difference we notice is that English paper money doesn't tear, whereas in the US, our dollar bills are full of tears.
What is your money made out of? It can't tear? It doesn't tear? I've never felt British money. Like, is it made of plastic? Or I know some currencies around the world are a little more high-tech than our barbaric paper money here in America, but it can't tear. That's cool.
And another money difference is that there are way more coins in England than in the United States. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Back in the States, the common coins are penny, nickel, dime, quarter.
Yeah.
In England, there's a £2, £1, 50 pence, 20 pence,
10 pence.
10 pence, 5 pence.
So you actually are using coins for like entire pounds, like rather than bills. Because we don't even have like a $2 coin that I'm aware of. Maybe technically. We technically have a $1 coin. No one uses it. Nobody uses it at all. But it sounds like in England, or maybe this is just British currency, you actually use these bigger denomination coins. Yeah, we only have 4 coins.
2 pence, 1 pence.
That's like
So many
that's twice
coins!
as many as the U.S. has.
It's kind of fun in a way. Like you could carry your big old pirate satchel, your pirate bag full of money, coins. You want to feel it. You want it to have some weight. when you rob a British bank, you want it to feel like something. You want coin. I want $1 million in just £1 coins. They're like, sir, please. It's like, no. And a wheelbarrow. And then you just get caught immediately. But it was more fun, I guess.
Yeah, it was a lot of coins.
Bathrooms in England don't have light switches. Instead, they have the little string hanging from the ceiling that you pull.
What? You know what? This is the level of random fact that I came for. This is great. Is this true? This is bathrooms in England. There's not just a light switch for the light? Is this true? This seems too random. It's usually a pull cord? Let me listen to this again.
Have light switches. Instead, they have the little string hanging from the ceiling that you pull.
It's always a string? Why? I mean, like with several things here, it is more fun to have a string to pull. But I'm just wondering why. That's so random.
If you're an English person and you know what we're talking about, do let us know because we were super curious. Why do bathrooms have light strings?
Light strings.
Like, that is something you would never, ever hear here in America. Other than from, like, Americans who have been to England. So this is great. Like, this is a great video.
Instead of switches. Another difference between England and the US is that light switches switch the opposite way, whereas in the United States, we flip up to turn on the light. In England, you flick down to turn on the light.
You know, I think to be honest, most Americans, we have no idea what way we're flipping the switch. Like, I've never noticed. And I swear sometimes it can be either way, like depending on whose house you're in.
Also, the plugs are different.
And if you're someone that likes sweeping, do be aware that the brooms are different in England and the United States. In England,
What?
they look like this as a standard household broom, but in the United States, they look like this.
This is amazing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've seen that type of broom. Now I'm going to call it the English broom. I think we call it a push broom. It's probably better. Our broom that looks like the broom a witch flies around on is more for like pulling motion, I want to say. Yeah. Not as easy to use either. I don't know why we do that. I never thought about this.
The way you use forks and knives are different in the United States and in England. Back home in the States, people aren't really taught how to use forks and knives.
Generally, you eat with your right hand. But when you use a knife, you change it around and you hold the fork with your left hand and you cut with your right hand, and then when you're done cutting, you put down the knife and then you switch back again and then you eat the food with your right hand.
In England, they're much more efficient. You just keep the fork in your left hand, you keep the knife in your right hand.
I feel like I've heard about this sort of, or at least I've heard about how us Americans like are very inefficient with how we use forks and knives and we switch them around. And honestly, this is one of those things where if you're American, you don't ever think about it. Like, ever. So I don't even notice if I do this. I probably do. And it's probably because we've just built up the skill of cutting in our dominant hand, and we're not willing to learn to do it left-handed if you're a right-handed person. Whereas this just seems much more practical on basically every level how English people do it. I'll admit that.
And you stab like this, upside down, Americans. You cut, and then you eat.
Wow.
I also noticed that they did a lot of piling up. Like they'll use their knife to like pile food onto the backside of their fork, and then they'll eat it. Like
Pile food onto the back side of your fork. I've never heard of that before. What is the strategy there? What is the technique? Is that, and why the back of the fork? Maybe this is something that English people out there, maybe this is something you never think about either, but it's kind of fun to hear about.
that.
Yeah, that's not something we do back home.
No, or is that just the way that people were that we were eating with?
But we'll find out. You guys tell us, how do you use forks?
That's true. It's like, is this representative of all English people or just the people they were hanging out with?
American way is inefficient. Like
The
so
American
many
way
train springs. Like,
is so terrible. England, you win this round.
We noticed during our time in England that the attitude towards nudity as well as alcohol is a lot less puritanical than it is in the States.
Oh.
In the States, we
Yeah, it's crazy here in America because we will allow, on television and movies, we'll allow like swearing, violence, gore, really like disturbing themes, but not nudity. Like that is very taboo, very much, which I think baffles a lot of Americans. Although we don't think about it very much. But this is very, very true.
we would refer to a certain mode of transit as a subway, whereas in England they would call it the underground or
The underground. The only reason I know what the underground is because of I've heard of the London Underground. But as far as like a blanket term for a underground train, most Americans say a subway for sure. Yeah, subway. So it's not just the London Underground. Underground is just a word for an underground public transport system in the form of a train in England, by the sound of it.
the metro or the tube.
The
Tube.
Not the tube, the tube.
Tube. I think we're getting it right this time.
Tube.
Tube.
Okay.
Ah.
This is fantastic. I'm really enjoying this. I think I have to stop here for now. I didn't get through very much of it. I tried, but it's so interesting, and I just want to talk about all these little differences. It's great. This video is awesome. This is by Wandering Ravens. I got to give it a like. I'm definitely going to come back to this video and learn more about these differences between America and England in part 2 of this. But I think I got to stop here for now. We've gone on quite a bit as it is. So if you've enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on any of the differences we've talked about here today. If these are accurate, that'd be really interesting to hear about. And if you're interested in part 2 of this, or more videos like this, me reacting to England and the UK, and learning about UK culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.